Where not just women are in danger, but all marginalized people. Where being uniquely different right now might truly be considered a crime. It seems as though we had all slipped into a false sense of comfort, that justice would prevail and that good would win in the end. Well, good did not win this election, but good will win in the end. So what today means is that we are far from the end. Today marks the beginning of our story. The revolution starts here. The fight for the right to be free, to be who we are, to be equal. Let's march together through this darkness, and with each step, know that we are not afraid. That we are not alone. That we will not back down. That there is power in our unity, and that no opposing force stands a chance in the face of true solidarity. And to our detractors that insist that this march will never add up to anything,
Boston Red here with Friday Java, a weekly magazine of political theory, polling, and commentary. It is part of the history called people that make up this fascinating journey. We are part of the Obama network. For that, we make no apologies. What we pledge to do is give you the facts on a bridge to history. What body politics is, the most up-to-date theories of political science and psephology. Stay tuned for this incredible ride. Boston Red, peace out.
The Monday Morning Quarterback on the 10th of May 2019 from WBRN Radio and on the Boston Red Network. Good morning, as one would say, as we move through the first week of May, and we're now to the 10th. However, some parts of the country haven't realized that yet. We look in Montana, parts of the Midwest have received snow, Dakotas, etc. But it will be moving away, and as it always does. An interesting program today. We have the people from the University of Virginia, and we always pay homage to Heber Heyer, who was murdered there by white supremacists. And we have Charlie Cook of the Cook Report. Amy Walter, also of the Cook Report. Two columns here. Charlie Cook, the best handicapper in America, no doubt about it. His title is The Perceived Value of Nomination, and Amy Walters is talking about the electability trap. On our special production, Amy Klobuchar at Fox News. She was at the Fox News town hall meeting in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, a Rust Belt city, a venerable city known for beer. And they have a good team there in the Milwaukee team, very good team there, the National League team there in Milwaukee. And they also have the Bucks. The Bucks are competing in the finals of the NBA. They moved on. They eliminated our Celtics, so they continue, as one would say, to move on there in Milwaukee. So we thought we'd get some different points of view. We also have some polling from the via the portal called Real Clear Politics, but we'll be looking at a mom-up poll here, and also out of Arizona, OH Predictive Insights there in the state of Arizona. So we'll look at that polling, and I guess we'll take a brief look at Morning Consult. This is on DJ Trump's approval rating. Charlie Cook, I believe, will also talk about this. He's at 43%. And we have a Boston story. I was debating when to bring this one up, but this is the Red Sox, the 2018 World Series winners, went to the White House. And several players and the manager decided not to go. In fact, I think we'll have that story first. It won't be the old proverbial when it bleeds, it leads here. When it bats and wins World Series, it leads here. Nonetheless, let's see. Let me get this going here. This is from the Globe. The racial divide in the Red Sox visit to Trump's White House is impossible to ignore. And let's dive right into this, starting with Joey Cora. This is from Dave Sheehan. Actually, the Washington Post, but it's in the Globe. The Red Sox manager, Alex Cora, remember when he played, recently discovered the mule function on Twitter, which has come in handy in the aftermath of his decision. First revealed over the weekend by newspapers in his native Puerto Rico to skip the defending World Series champs schedule a visit to the White House. But to date, no such button exists for real life, and so on Monday afternoon, the visitors dug out in the Orioles' park at Cannon Yards. Cora patiently answered questions for a third straight day about his decision, as the Red Sox White House visit is increasingly framed as a story about race, ethnicity, and politics, which it is. I learned conviction from my dad, my mother, of course, said on Monday about his decision. The latest text I got before the game was from my mom, and it was a powerful one. The manager or coach of a championship team rarely, if ever, skips the traditional White House visit following the season, provided they are employed by the franchise. As such, Cora became the highest profile member of the Red Sox to announce his intention to skip the visit with DJ Trump, who stands towards aid for Puerto Rico in the aftermath of Hurricane Mara in 2017, remains a flashpoint for residents and natives of the island territory. But Cora isn't the only uniformed Red Sox personnel to opt out of the trip. The players, Mookie Betts, Xavier Bogaerts, Jackie Bradley Jr., Rafael Devers, Sandy Leon, Eduardo Nuez, David Price, Christian Vasquez, Hector Villegas, has said publicly they would be a declined invitation. The other roughly 20 players, few of whom are on the injured list, either announced their intention to attend or were presumed to be attending. It's impossible not to notice that one slight difference between the two groups. The opting out of the trip are all people of color, while those planning to attend, with the exception of designated hitter J.D. Martinez, who is of Cuban descent, are Europeans. The dichotomy was highlighted by a tweet from a longtime Boston sports columnist Steve Buckley, who noted basically it's the White Sox who are going. Well, the White Sox did show up. The racial divide was further underscored when Price, who was an African American, retweeted Buckley's tweet to nearly 1.8 million followers, adding, "I just feel like more than 38,000 should see this tweet," a reference to Buckley's Twitter following of 38,000. Price retweeted led to rampant speculation on Monday that the racial divide of the White House visit has become a clubhouse problem for the team. Price, however, later clarified his stance in remarks to the Globe, saying that the original Buckley tweet was an insensitive tweet that needed to be seen by more people. This sometimes happens with established sports writers that are in a field where there are not very many people of color that write about sports. That's an unfortunate situation. That's one reason why at the Boston Red Network, WBRN Radio, we decided to put more of a spotlight on sports, and we plan to do more of that as we move along with It's All About Sports. Price previously had explained his decision to opt out of the White House visit during an interview with the MLB, that's Major League Baseball Network, saying it's baseball season. Most players have been equally bland in their reason for skipping the event. Although Vasquez, who is from Mexico, told reporters that he was opting out because Trump has said lots of stuff about Mexico, and he didn't want to offend anyone in his native country. The Red Sox management has framed the issue as one of personal choice, not of politics, having also won the World Series title in 2004, 2007, and 2013. The team's previous visits to the White House on the both Republican Democratic presidents. This week, the team will be operating separate charter flights to Boston, one day apart for those players choosing to skip the White House visit and those choosing to attend. Yeah, the curse of the Bandito went off in Boston, and it really went off in Boston starting in 2004. That would be on G.W. Bush, and in the heart of the Depression, 2017 and 2013 on Barack Obama. So this would be the fourth World Series for the team in roughly, the last 15 years. Not bad at all for a franchise like the Cubs that waited forever. Asked Monday if he sensed any tension amongst the players, of which they are and they're not visiting the White House. Of course, said not at all. Red Sox players have echoed their sentiments, with Bogarts telling reporters it's a personal choice and everyone respects that, and it has no effect in the clubhouse or on the field. Corey has been clear about his reason for skipping the ceremony and tying his decision to the lingering resentment in Puerto Rico, to the Trump administration response to Hurricane Mara, which killed more than 3,000 residents in September 2017. He pointed out that Puerto Ricans are still struggling, still fighting, while lacking the basic necessities almost a year and a half later. Since Mara, It was a decision I made with a lot of conviction, he reiterated on Monday. I think the message was clear and simple. Everybody understands. I don't feel comfortable going to celebrate while we are living what we are living back home. Since the start of the Trump administration, traditional White House visits of championship teams have taken a more political team. Previously, numerous members of the Philadelphia Eagles, 2016 and 2017 Golden State Warriors decided en masse against the White House visit, only to have Trump subsequently rescind their invitations. The president also was criticized for serving fast food to members of the 2018 Clemson football team, while some members of the 2018 Patriots had made it clear they wouldn't attend the ceremony. On Monday, the same day Price Twitter controversy arose, and Cora reiterated his reason for skipping. The White House held a Presidential Medal of Freedom ceremony at which Trump slapped the medal, signifying the nation's highest honor, on the head of one of Tiger Woods, who is an African American and of Asian descent. Had to find someone. Sometimes it's very, very hard to find anyone, so he did the best he actually could do. And the picture here, you can find it. Here's what Trump said during the Red Sox visit. This is in the Globe, and it is by Nick DeCoster Kipler. The ceremony on Rose Garden ceremony on Thursday afternoon. DJ Trump said it was a pleasure to welcome the Red Sox to the White House, congratulating the team members of their 2018 World Series winning, or at least the ones that attended. And this goes on to talk about those that showed up. Chris Sales was there, Steve Pierce was there, and Nathaniel Ivaldi was there. He shouted out some of the players. Of course, the MVP, Mookie Blaylock, Dave Pierce, skipped the event. Trump, who was escorted into Rose Garden by Sales and his, DJ Martinez, led off his remarks by commemorating the Red Sox owner, John Henry, as a great business person, and the chair, Tom Vina, a man who has done a fantastic job on life, on their first season as well as the organization. $716 billion we spent last year turning to Henry. That's a lot of money, even for you, wouldn't you say? I'm not sure what. Oh, this is supporting veterans. Anyway. Trump then turned to the unstoppable Red Sox history of 2018. I watched, he said, you outscored your opponent by plural, by 229 runs and won 108 games in the regular season, the most in Red Sox history. The records prompt cheers from the Rose Garden crowd, to which Trump remarked, "You've got a lot of fans." However, recalling the 2018 playoffs, the president mentioned the arch rival Yankees drew even louder cheers, no doubt. Later in the ceremony, when presenting Trump with a customized number 18 Red Sox jersey, Martinez outed the president, as a Yankees fan, no doubt. Trump recounted throwing out the first pitch at Fenway Park, which resulted in several unflattering photos when the team hosted the Yankees in 2006. Trump, a former high school player, praised Ivate for pitching the epic nice pitch relief appearance in extra innings of Game 3 of the World Series. Perhaps unaware of the Red Sox signed Eovaldi to a 4-year deal last December, he asked the team, "You want to keep him?" No, it shows that DJ hasn't been following the Red Sox very much. The Red Sox, who would go on the rally and win the game 9-6, thanks in large part to Pierce, the first baseman and World Series MVP, who hit the game-tying solo home run in the 8th inning. Trump also turned to shake Pierce's hand. You are doing well this year, pretty well this year, right? He asked him. Pierce, who has not been very much well this year, he's batting a 111 with 0 home runs, playing only 17 of 38 games. So in other words, he's virtually not in the picture this year is one way of saying it. He noted the Red Sox have now won more World Series games than any other organization this century. Also pretty good that the Boston teams have won a combination of 12 titles between their 4 major sports teams. When you think about it, what Boston has done in a short period of time is pretty amazing in lots of ways. But in sports, certainly, he said, congratulations. In closing, Trump repeatedly said he was excited to give the team a rare tour of a Lincoln bedroom, which he offers to White House visitors. Tremendous honor to have you in the White House, and we're going to look at the Lincoln bedroom. I'm not sure what the fixation on the Lincoln bedroom is, but one never knows with DJ Trump. But for DJ Trump to get the minds of the public off of the Mueller investigation, various subpoenas floating through Washington, he's glad to do it, period. Because committees are issuing subpoenas up there and holding people in contempt of Congress, right and left. Thus, DJ would like to walk that back, while at the same time sending planes and ships to the Middle East off of the Iranian coast. A flashpoint there. At the same time, he placed additional tariffs on products that are coming from China as of today. If they're already in the pipeline, that is not a bad situation. But if they need to get in the pipeline, then you will pay more. I heard somewhere this morning that an average family under the tariff regime would cost, I should say, an average family about $500. But with China, it starts, and this is one of the problems about these tariff sanction regimes. Over periods of time, they level off. Even if they are catastrophic to a nation, we can see that with Iran. Tariffs were put on them in 1980, and sanctions, I should say, there in that case. And they're back again, and people survive under that. Does cause some difficulty, but it also forces a nation to look inward in terms of their production, particularly machine tools. And the sanctions on China, well, the markets have not done very well on this. We'll have on numbers, man. We'll talk about the effects of the new tariffs. They are negotiating in Washington. It'd be interesting to see what they come up with. And at the same time, on the Korean Peninsula, Chairman Ung and his Democratic Republic of Korea government have been testing on what they call short-range missiles, about 250 to 275 miles there. So that is going on one plane, and in Venezuela, some joker was literally arrested. I had to laugh about it. Was arrested in his car, and they just towed him the car and all the way to jail. He was one of the henchmen of Juan Guaido. And there was another one, I'm not sure who he was. He evidently is in the Italian consulate or the ambassador's house or whatever. Must have a lot of bedrooms there, rooms to let, or whatever the story is. He's the second person to be there along with Lopez. And in Washington, the government in Washington has shut off the electricity and the water to the Venezuelan embassy there. Now, Code Pink and other progressive groups were occupying that particular space, and fascists that support Guaido were outside and wouldn't let people bring in food and water. That was an unfortunate situation there. Now they've cut off the electricity and the water to force people out of that embassy, and that is a violation of international law, and that gets into not a very good situation at all. So we have that in D.C., part of, I suppose you'd say, a roundup of the news. Let's go now to the University of Virginia. Larry Sabato's shop. Notes on the state of the House. The Democratic generic ballot edge endures, at least for now, but they shouldn't get their hopes up on redistricting. This is by Kyle Klondike. He's the managing editor of the Crystal Ball, Sabato's Crystal Ball. And I'll make a little announcement here. The Center for Politics is hiring a new coordinator of media relations who will help with the Crystal Ball and broad communication efforts at the center. And there's a job description there. The key points in this article: while it is very early in the cycle, we agree on that, these polls are not predictive so far in advance. The House generic ballot points right now looks very similar to what we saw 2 years ago. Republicans almost certainly will need to lead in generic ballot to retake the House, but perhaps they won't need as big of a lead as we've seen in the past, because the nature of partisan voting is in a presidential year, and the abundance of targets in districts that Trump will carry. If the new House maps are created in Maryland, this is where it's very important. Maryland, Michigan, and North Carolina, and Ohio, because of court orders, the Democrats could benefit on balance. It may very well be no map end up being changed. Maps, I should say. Well, that's the problem. That had much more effect. Voter suppression is what it called in the form of gerrymandering. Other forms also by just literally cleaning up the rolls, kicking eligible voters off the rolls on the various schemes. They either haven't voted when they have, or they're not citizens when they are various other things when they send out notices every 4 or 6 years. Some people have moved, and they pretend there's no return, no forwarding address. So if you're out there and you were registered in any of these states, Maryland, Michigan, North Carolina, Ohio, and you moved since the last presidential election, make certain you can go online and find out, are you registered to vote? Do you still live in the same precinct or whatever? And make sure that you get whatever you need to get done before the deadlines next year in 2020. That will also apply to people in terms of identification. Whatever they need, they should now start seeking that out. All right, the 2019 generic ballot polls, they are lots like 2017. Let's start here with a caveat. House generic ballot polling from a year and a half before the general election should not be treated as predictive. No doubt about that, and I wonder why we're talking about it. The 2020 House election depends on a lot of factors that remain unknowable. Most importantly, the tone-setting effect of the presidential race, which at this point appears to be something of a 50-50 proposition. That said, if you look for signs of growing a backlash against the new Democratic majority in the U.S. House of Representatives, you want to find a national generic ballot polling so far. You can find it But that's sort of irrelevant. We'll move through this quickly here. It is true that Democrats lead the House generic ballot early in both 210 and 214. It were not very good cycles there. But in the end, being a great year for the Republicans, that's why we say this polling is not necessarily all that predictive. Well, you have to understand, in 2010, that was under President Barack Obama, and that was a racist reaction to his election and him moving into the White House in 2009. In 2014, another situation there, Barack Obama had won re-election and remained in the White House in 2013. Democratic presidential candidates against DJ Trump, former Vice President Biden, typically the strongest polling so far. When polling in a presidential race tightens, the generic ballot might tighten also. Well, possible there, and possibly not. A nationalized election could benefit House Republicans, most notably if DJ Trump wins re-election. Well, this is the whole general idea. A famous congressperson, Speaker of the House, Thomas Tip O'Neill, is from Boston, said that all politics are local. That is to a certain extent. But what has happened is, and we talked about this earlier, I think I wrote a paper in the 70s about this, the idea of nationalizing races. And that's precisely what people like the Cato Institute, the Koch brothers, and what have you, they have talking points of themes, 1, 2, 3, 4. And they have taken these out with great skills, using the Cato and Heritage for their so-called academic or intellectual efforts, think tanks, and thus getting, especially the Koch brothers, cookie-cutter policies and putting money into legislative races where the Republicans did well, such as right to work, such as these abortion things, charter school vouchers. And there's a long list of things that they've been pushing, and they've been able to push these in state legislatures for a simple reason. They have the policy positions. They put the money into these campaigns. They fund these ultra-right-wing candidates, or they buy off if there are any progressive, but not progressive, moderate Republicans or Democrats left out there. They co-opt them, and that's the way it is done. Very successful way of doing it. While progressives were looking, well, we'll do this locally, we'll organize in our local communities. That won't cut it in 2019, 2020. You have to have national perspectives. Bernie Sanders ran a brilliant campaign from the standpoint that he's running on a Medicare for all. It's a national program in all 50 states, etc. Running on the $15, which is in all states. Some states has been an initiative. Other states it has been through legislation. Cities have adopted very successful model. And you can go on and on and on. And Elizabeth Warren talking about the robber barons, the Gilded Age type operators. Bernie just came out with a nice little video about what the religious people call usury, excessive interest. That is in Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, more so in Islam. And incidentally, happy road Ramadan Mubarak to our listeners out here. And also happy Mother's Day, won't want to forget that. Anyway, as we move back here, the Republicans need to flip at least 18 House seats to win the chamber again, with 31 Democrats in Trump won seats. Republicans win the House back just by sweeping all the Democratic House districts where Trump won by 3 points or more in 2018. That's easier said than done. For one thing, we could imagine Trump's performance weakening in some of those districts because they cover some affluent and highly educated suburban areas that are trending away from the Republicans. Also, to the extent incumbency matters, Democrats have strong office holders in some of these districts. Still, the districts are there for Republicans to retake the House, at least on paper. Well, that could happen. You have these blue dog Democrats. I call them yellow dog Democrats. What do you want to call them? That their policies are very, very similar to the policies of Republicans. Where I think it differs, it used to be where you'd have similar characters out there. You'd have a moderate Democrat and perhaps a more moderate Republican, or at least not a far-right Republican. And that would work out. But the Republican Party basically has been running very far-right people. Now, in some districts, they got away with it. In Iowa, they got away with it with Joni Ernest. But in general, that does cause problems. There's no doubt about it. But that was a statewide race, and statewide races are a little bit different many times than congressional races. But still, and he'll get to this, and let's move back to it. As we look at Ohio, when I previewed this, here we go. It's possible in 4 states with new House maps, the combination of outcomes would almost certainly benefit Democrats on the balance. I think we talked about these 4 states here, North Carolina redistricting along with Maryland, which features a Democrat gerrymander and is at the center of a major Supreme Court decision. That's in Maryland. And courts recently ruled that Michigan and Ohio maps are partisan or gerrymandered. Both maps were drawn by Republicans, but unlike in Ohio, Democrats picked up a couple of suburban Michigan seats last year despite the gerrymandering. That's in Michigan. So it's possible that all 4 of these states will have new maps. The combination of outcomes almost certainly would benefit the Democrats. Democrats likely would pick up multiple seats in North Carolina, Ohio, and Michigan is hard to figure out because the delegation is currently 7-7. Perhaps even likely that none of these maps will get drawn. I mean, that could possibly happen too. It took arguably the most liberal Supreme Court in American history. That was Earl Warren's court in the 60s to issue. That was Map versus Ohio. It finally ended apportionment of Congress and state legislatures. We don't have that at this point in time, obviously. Some of these decisions, the Supreme Court has repeatedly declined to intervene in partisan redistricting cases. In other words, without knowing what the Supreme Court ultimately will say, we'll be surprised if in the end up being the court that intervenes against partisan gerrymandering. No doubt about that. That in itself is a situation in those states. Republicans hold a 10-3 advantage. This is what I was looking for here. Until credible accusations of fraud prompted a do-over election. That was in North Carolina 9. The GOP primary for that race is next week. Veteran Dan McCurdy, the 2018 nominee, is unopposed for the Democratic nominee. Anyway, that is in North Carolina, 10-3 edge. 10 to, well, let me see, edge. In the Buckeye State, this is unbelievable. In Ohio, 12-4 edge in Ohio in the House delegation. The Tar Heels 10-3. This is what gerrymandering will do for you. Let me move on here to Charlie Cook. Perceived value of nomination. Won't spend a lot of time on this, but basically you have Joe Lunchbox Biden, Michael Bennett, now officially in the race for Democratic presidential nomination, and Governor Steve Bullock. He's out of Montana. A 22-field race. The 22 candidates in there. Large field of candidates for a party's nomination tends to reflect two separate realities. That the nomination is viewed as particularly valuable and with a strong chance that it will lead to a general election win. Two, that there is no one or two candidates is so intimidating as to discourage others from getting in, is what happened in 2016 with early Monster Clinton. Okay, to give his thing. In 2016, Democrats faced a difficult task of holding on to the presidency beyond the 8 years of Barack Obama. Since the end of World War II, Republicans have been unsuccessful in winning 3 consecutive terms after 8 years. Dwight Eisenhower, Tricky Dick Richard Nixon, Gerald Ford, and George W. Bush. Democrats were unable to do 2 terms of John Kennedy, Lyndon Johnson, Bill Clinton, and Barack Obama. The only time this happened was 3/4 of a century was George H.W. Bush after 8 years of Reagan. What a nightmare. In addition, most Democrats perceived Clinton as being the dominant position. Only Senator Sanders of Vermont and Martin O'Malley, hadn't heard of him much. Maryland governor, well, he sort of disappeared. We looked at favorably upon him before Bernie Sanders entered the race. But by that time, there's a rebellion in Baltimore and into him right there. Early perception of the value of nominations is important, but not always accurate. After George H.W. Bush hit his 89% approval rating, that was in February 8th and March 3rd, 2001, Gallup poll, a lot of Democrats passed on a chance to run against him, not the least of which was Mario Cuomo, and only Jerry Brown and Tom Harkin. We supported Tom Harkin that year. And Bob Kerrey of Nebraska, Senator Tongass, the late Senator Tongass, and of course the candidate there, one Wild Bill Clinton out of Arkansas, decided to run. What wasn't known was the economy was about to slump, and with it, President Bush's ratings dropped as low as 29%. Well, once you get to 29% in the presidential year, that was in July 30th to August the 2nd, where it really mattered, and the no new tax pledge done him in. But it took Ross Perot of Dallas to bring this race around for Bill Clinton. DJ Trump hasn't had such dramatic peaks and valleys. In both Gallup and Fox polls, for example, he's had a 10-point trading range from the low 35s to the high 45s in Gallup, and the bottom 38%, peaks of 48% according to Fox. One key factor in whether the 2020 race will effectively be a referendum on old DJ Trump, or more of a choice between Trump, presumably, and a Democratic nominee. Democrats might well prefer it to be the first Republican and of the second, although Trump may also turn to referendum on democratic socialism, something he is pushing, there's no doubt about that. And it behooves Democrats, since he has a big megaphone, to understand what so-called democratic socialism, or in effect, it is social democraticism. I'm more of a right-wing type than in Europe, but they're social democrats, and they need to tell people that. 5 major polls tested the variations of re-election questions in 6 months. A recent one was the Massachusetts University, that's upstate New York, April 24th, 27th for NPR and PBS. NewsHour found 33% of 840 registered voters interviewed said they would definitely plan to vote for DJ Trump. 54% would definitely vote against him. 12% were not sure. An NBC poll, 900, pretty standard there. In February, found that 41% would definitely vote or probably vote for DJ Trump. 48% would definitely or probably vote for the Democrat. 11%, I didn't know where it was. The Salsa poll, that's out of Des Moines, Iowa, national poll for Gwinnett College, found 35% would definitely vote for Trump, and 43% would definitely vote for someone else. Fox News last asked the re-election question in a December 11 poll. That's pretty much useless. The 38% would vote for him. Another January poll, I'm not sure why he did it this way, of 893, substantial poll there. 42% said they would definitely vote for DJ Trump. That is about where he has stood in the national polls. 56% said they would definitely not, and 1% remained uncertain. Obviously, whom the Democrats nominate is relevant. Although unknowns at this time, there's an age-old debate on whether it's best to nominate someone with intense support amongst the base who can guarantee a strong party turnout, or someone who is highly acceptable to independents. The Democrats have been hitting that tune for a very long time, since the Clinton years. But Clinton's election was an aberration in that you had Ross Perot out of Dallas, who announced Clinton's victory, and he pulled enough conservative votes away from George H.W. Bush. Parties and nominees need to be mindful of both. It is best to be able to walk and chew gum at the same time. I always liked Charlie Cook for that. But turn out someone who is highly acceptable amongst independents and can resonate with voters in the center of the parties. That's Charlie Cook, was writing in the National Journal on the 4th of May. Electability trap. We had this question to Amy Klobuchar, which she said she was a progressive in the middle. Anyway, every 4 years the party in the White House grapples with the question of who they want to serve as their standard bearer, and like a clockwork, the first thing they think about is the party out of the White House, sorry about that, is what went wrong in the previous campaign. The last time they think we put up a candidate who is too or not enough, fill in the blanks, who didn't do enough or didn't do too much, fill in the blanks, and run a campaign that was too much, was much, too much, little, too late, fill in the blanks. The winning nominee was almost always the candidate who fits the move in the moment of the current time. No one that wants to relitigate the outcomes of the last election. In early 2008, the talk amongst Democrats was the candidate was strongest to win Ohio, the state that Brother John Kerry narrowly lost 4 years early. Well, it was stolen from there by Blackwell in Ohio. On paper, the safest bet was the Hillary Clinton, but the nominee was Barack Obama out of Chicago, who not only carried Ohio but expanded the Electoral College in the states that Democrats had not won in the modern era: North Carolina, Indiana, Virginia, and they still are winning in Virginia. States that hadn't won since the 90s, like Colorado and Nevada. They're still winning in those states also. The shift is on. But there's not many GOP primary voters concede that John McCain and Willard Romney were mainstream business-like business-friendly Republicans with supposed appeal to moderates. They lost. So why did Jeb Bush, Marco Vegas Rubio, two candidates with similar profiles to McCain and Romney, seem as electable? Trump was the right candidate at the right time, no doubt about that. Who didn't need to convince voters of electability as a Bush and company. Well, he was already known. See, when you're known, your TV personality, even reality TV, everybody knows you. Trump, like Reagan, had been around forever on the talk show circuit, hustling this, hustling that, in the business magazines for his hotel, real estate properties. People already knew his name, so when they know your name, it's easier to get out. Those other candidates ran against him were primarily not well known. Even Jeb Bush, he had the Bush name, but he was out of Florida. So we go now to the Clinton loss. Many blame James Comey. Others pin it on the Russians, as also she said she would have to go to Wisconsin excuse because voters are more sexist in reality than they admit to the pollsters. There's probably no doubt about that. You have to factor that into your model. But while Democrats may not agree on exactly why Clinton lost, there's plenty of strong consensus that Joe Lunchbox Biden would have won. Scranton Joe, as he's called, would have won Pennsylvania. They cry Biden may have not been a perfect candidate, they argue, but he wouldn't have lost the Rust Belt. There's probably no doubt about that. In fact, Donna Brazile at one time thought of replacing Hillary the Monster Clinton when she was chair of the party, with Joe Biden. The candidate released internal polling showing that, and just a few weeks ago, this is Bernie Sanders, who also could have won the race against DJ Trump, by leading Trump by significant margins in Pennsylvania, Michigan, and Wisconsin. Now, the last time around, Bernie didn't even use a poster. Now he's got a poster. In April, the Washington Post polled asked Democrats who did they vote for in a party primary caucus in their state. Noted the poll didn't read the list of candidates. Almost half of Democrats responded, 47%. Didn't have an option. And she also cites the Wall Street Journal. Only Biden and Sanders universally known. There's no doubt about that. Democrats say Warren, who was the third most recognized, 10% of Democrats said they couldn't rate her, while Amy Klobuchar was the least known. Half the Democrats say they didn't know enough about her. And old Peter Buttigieg, the current media sensation, well, the media is pushing him along, was recognized enough to be rated by 57%. 43% they didn't know enough about him. Well, the more they know about the little pencil neck, the less they'll like about him. Early polls also suggest that Bernie Sanders is about as well liked among Democrats as Joe Biden. Given Sanders and Biden are equally known, then it's easy to make a direct appeal to apple-to-apple comparisons. For example, Democrats support Democrats. 70% say they're enthusiastic or comfortable with Biden, while 62% are with Bernie. So it's pretty much the same there. But while a little over a quarter of Democrats, 27%, say they have reservations or uncomfortable with Biden, 36% are uncomfortable with Sanders. I know I just walked through a bunch of polling numbers, but that's not what Democratic voters are doing right now. All the pros and cable ties, well, these are hired guns, are debating the electability game. They are mostly making it more than it really is. Debate over electability at this stage of the game is based on what happened in the last one. Well, This race is not going to be about the last one. And lots of Democrats look at Biden and think he would have won 2016, and as such see him as the safest choice of 2020. However, Biden is starting to look a little like a risky bet. He stumbles into debate, bumbles on the campaign trail, if he starts to look like it's hypothetical. She's hoping. While the campaign is base to collapse, the winner of the 2020 primary will be a candidate who can prove he or she is best suited for the unique challenge of the upcoming campaign, and not one who is fighting over what they should do the same or different from 2016. That always lingers around. That is what you call an untold story. One of those situations that we always have. Let's do the sports now. I think we can safely say that. We'll fly over to ESPN here and see where we are. Trailblazers win one. They're tied 3-3 in their series with the Nuggets. The Trailblazers 119, Nuggets 108. That's the Western semi-final series. It was played in Portland. And let's see here. And we have the other one. The 76ers win 112 to 108 over the Raptors in Philadelphia. The series is now tied 3-3. Go Philly. And, the Bruins lead 1-0. This is in the East, final game of 1 over the Hurricane. So let's go to baseball here. I gotta have somewhere to go. We did get in a couple of games last night. Angels and Tigers. Angels at 13-0 over the Tigers in the Motor City. Ian, it looks like in 5 here. Cleveland 5-0 over the White Sox. The Cubs win 1 in Wrigley Field, 4-1 over the Marlins. And the Rockies slugfest in Denver, 12-11 over the Giants. The Rockies had 14 hits, 2 errors, and the Giants 9 hits, no errors. Oops. Sometimes you hit the wrong button. The Reds 3-0 over Oakland in Oakland. Giants beat the Mariners 3-1. And the Cardinals had a hellacious game here. Michael Walker was the winner. 17-4 over the Pirates in St. Louis. A game we tuned into, the Battle of Texas here. The Astros 4-2 over the Rangers, who just call themselves the Texans. And in 10, D-backs defeat Atlanta 3-2. And finally, the Nationals win 1 in Los Angeles, 6-0 over the Dodgers. And Rick Hill was a loser there. Very interesting indeed. We will reappear on the week that was on Saturday morning. We have Numbers Man coming up. And an open source report this weekend, hopefully, sometime this weekend. And we have some travel stuck in between here, but we'll see what we see. Have a good weekend, everyone. We'll talk to you on Saturday morning, the week that was. Good day. And happy Mother's Day.